Welcome to my Nomad Sculpt series for intermediate to advanced users. Today we're going to be modeling the Omnimatrix. All project files will be linked in the description. If you have any other questions or you're having a hard time keeping up with this tutorial, just keep in mind that this is meant for intermediate users, which means you'll have to have a pretty good understanding on what most of the tools in Nomad Sculpt do. With that being said, let's get started. We're going to be starting with the blockout phase, which is the most important part whenever you're modeling something in 3D. If you can't get the general shapes down, then you can't refine it near the end. So really take your time with this part, as it's about 90% of the work. With that being said, I'm just starting with a whole bunch of cylinders to get the general shape of the watch, and then from there we'll go into finer details. It's important to always have access to your reference image, so I'm just going to put it right here in the corner. That way I can see what details I need to add to the watch. Now I'm using a tube to add the details on the outside of the watch, mainly the tube function. And then we're going to be using the mirror modifier with the X and Z axis turned on so that we can mirror it and save time. Now I'm coming in and making everything hollow. And keep in mind, you want to avoid validating any shape until the very end if possible. You'll see why later in this tutorial. You'll notice that I'm stacking these cylinders inside of each other. That way when I click one cylinder, it adjusts the size for all of them and it kind of links them. Any modification you make to one will apply it to every shape that's linked to the main body. Now it's time to focus a little bit more on the watch face, so I'm adding a torus. And then I'm going to use that same torus to make the ribs on the outside part of the watch face, like this. You'll notice that I'm also going to be adding a radial repeater. That way we can just repeat everything in the same circular motion. Then I will be using the selection tool to get rid of the extra ribs that I do not want on the watch, just like this. You'll notice that I kind of selected everything here. So just make sure that you have the things visible that you want to select and then delete them. It makes it a whole lot easier. Now I'm going to add dials to the actual watch face with the quad sphere and a cylinder as well. You'll notice that when I try to line them up, I kind of have an issue, but it's actually cool. Every object in Nomad Sculpt has coordinates that you can copy and paste, which is a really helpful feature, especially when you're trying to line up objects. You can see an example right here. I'm copying the Y coordinates for the translation from the quad sphere, and then I'm pasting them onto the actual cylinder itself. Now I'm going to use the trim tool to trim part of the actual torus, which is the watch face brim, and then I'm going to expand it. That way we get a little bit more detail like this. Now I'm going to add the padding inside of the actual watch band, so I'm going to be using another cylinder to do so, and then I'm going to be using the radial repeater on the x-axis to repeat everything. Then from here, I'm just going to use the gizmo to give it the same oval shape that the actual watch band has as well. Now that we have everything generally blocked out, now we're going to start trimming parts of meshes. That way we can get the overall fill of the actual watch band. And from here, I'm going to use the hide tool and delete the faces that I don't want. Use mask extract to extract the face so that it has perfect geometry, as you'll see right here. Mess around with the height setting until you get something that you're happy with, and then you could just clone the same shape instead of having to do it to every individual one, because it's just a repetition of them, just in different sizes and variations. So I just did that to get an overall fill, And then we'll probably come in later and refine some stuff as well. Then I'm going to come in with the trim tool and start making layers for part of the watches. As you can see that it reflects with the details. I duplicated one of the watch dials and then just made it bigger for this button that's on the side of the Omnitrix. You want to get in the habit of using the clone tool as much as possible in Nomad Sculpt, especially if the shape's already there, why remake it? Right here I'm using one of my favorite tools called Insert. You select the shape that you want to insert. Just make sure that you don't have instant selected or you'll kind of notice that it won't snap to a face. Once I have all the screws set up on one side of the watch, we can just use the mirror modifier to repeat everything on every side. So you'll want to repeat that on the x-axis and the z-axis as well. Now we're going to add the dials to the watch band. I forgot to add ribs to the dial on the top part of the watch band, so I'm recreating the dial and then I'm just going to replace it with the old one. Right here I'm cloning the tube tool and then I'll just be adjusting the size of it until everything lines up because we're attaching the tube to the face of the watch. I added a torus to the path just to keep the same curvature for around the tube. You could do this individually, it's just up to choice. Once I'm getting close to finished, I like to color everything just so I can get a better accurate representation compared to my reference. But we'll be doing the painting and texturing at the very end. I did notice that some of the proportions were off, so I'm just making quick adjustments with the gizmo size option tool and the trim tool as well. Now that basically everything is set up, we're just going to start adding textures. So I created a new project to create this alpha. Don't worry, you don't have to create this alpha, as I'll be linking this alpha in the description. Right here, I'll be turning a photo into an actual texture. So what you're going to want to do is go to reproject settings, and then you're going to want to select the opacity mask and the mask option right here. Then click reproject from itself. Now that we reprojected the mask from itself, we're going to use the inflate option to create the indents inside of the actual mesh. I reset all the colors so you guys can kind of walk through how you do the texturing. It's super simple. Take your time with this process, as it does take a little bit of time, and you'll want to play around with the colors, the roughness, and the metal settings. Now that I have everything set up color-wise, I'm just going in and adding alpha textures to the actual mesh itself. You'll want to subdivide everything, that way you can backstep it, and if you're using it for a game asset, you could actually bake the texture onto a low poly version of the mesh so that it's not game set heavy. Right here, I'm going to be using a lock radius stamp at 1% with an image on the actual paint object to just add an image from whatever you find on Pinterest to actually make the face of the watch. And then I'm going to go into the texture settings and add the same photo to emissive and then line them up, and then increase the emissive strength until you get the glow that you want. I added the same exact image to the buttons and dials to give them that glow effect as well. Play around with the post-process settings until you get a render ready photo. Keep in mind this is my first tutorial. I did learn a ton of stuff, so the next one should be a little bit more informative, as I kind of got down how I want to present my tutorials. Watch out for my next tutorial, as we will be building a full body alien from the actual Omnitrix series. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more.